I want to establish some basic class terminology. When we talk about foreign law, we're talking about the internal law of other countries and all the statutes, cases, or constitutional provisions, regulations involved. Comparative law is the academic discipline comparing the foreign law of different countries. So, a paper comparing the environmental regulations in Japan versus Israel would be a comparative law paper. International law, in contrast to those, is the law governing relationships between nations and their citizens. This can be further divided into public international law, which involves the relationship between nations. So, for example, the requirements that nations refrain from doing something, the requirement that they establish domestic legislation. This stands in contrast to private international law, which refers specifically to the law governing relationships between private parties from different countries. Private international law covers topics like contracts, tax, intellectual property. When I originally took this class, I remember this distinction being confusing, but really the essential question here is whether you're dealing with a choice of law conflict. If you have a legal research issue and you have to figure out which countries' copyright laws apply or which countries' service of process rules apply, that's going to be a private international law issue. Whereas public international law issues are bigger picture things dealing with the general law governing nations, like for example, the Paris Climate Agreement, requiring nations to commit to domestic measures to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. The typical US law firms are going to have a lot more resources helping you out with private international law, whereas universities tend to be better when it comes to resources dealing with public international law, and will, of course, cover all those resources later on in class. In this class, I might commonly use the acronym FCIL, which stands for Foreign, Comparative, and International Law. Really with this slide, why I brought it up in class was more than anything else just a contrivance to be able to show you the library catalog a bit. I don't know how well that worked. So what I want to talk about with jargon in foreign international legal research is basically just there's a lot of it. Usually you can Google particularly international law terms. But the library catalog has some resources that might be able to help you, that you might be able to, for example, cite to if you were writing a paper. That might be a little bit preferable to Wikipedia, really for academic reasons. As far as foreign law dictionaries go, you can always, of course, use Google. But really, with finding foreign law dictionaries, your best option is going to be research guides, which we'll talk about in the next video.